Hey, and welcome to this final special report from Signals from the Frontline on the 10th edition rules on the Leviathan box set. Now, Kicker, I'm taking the lead on this one because we've been going through the rules, and rather than going through every single change, because there's going to be lots of other folks out there doing that, I decided to try to highlight what I think are the 10 biggest changes from 9th to 10th edition 40K, just to give everyone an idea of some of the big changes coming up. Now, this is my top 10, and this is in what I believe is the order of smallest change to biggest change. But if you have your own thoughts, be sure to put them in the comments below and tell us what you think some of the biggest changes are that you've seen. But you ready to kick it off with number 10, Kicker?
Dude, I can't wait to see. I mean, I know you've been going through the rule book, trying to figure this all out. So I want to know what you think, man.
So number 10 is Fly. And they have changed Fly in the way it moves, in that you still can ignore intervening models when you move. But if you go on top of terrain, you no longer measure just horizontal distance, you measure diagonal distance.
Wow.
But it doesn't ignore terrain. So if you completely move over a terrain feature, you pay the up and down movement.
Ooh. You know, man, there's going to be so many people getting that wrong for the first few tournaments in 10th. Like, everyone's going to get that wrong.
But it really limits some of the mobility of those like flying vehicles and flying monsters. But if you think about it, if, you know, my flyer, this was an example that came up with some friends and I, is moving 20 inches across straight ground. If it has to fly over a 3-story ruin with the same amount of movement, it's not going 20 inches in lore. Like, it's spending some effort. So,
you know, Seth, what's really interesting about that is that it's going to impact us Frontline Gaming and other event organizers on how tall terrain features are.
Yeah,
suddenly now that
really becomes important. That becomes important. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
cool.
Number 9, the introduction of universal special rules. Now, I know that a lot of people want to put this higher on their list, and a lot of things that they introduced into the USRs were good things. They quantified deep strike, stealth, precision, other these rules that we've talked about. They added some new ones in there, but overall, my gut feeling was that there wasn't a ton of new rules in the USR section that weren't already basically existing in normal play. They just kind of codified them and made them all the same universal language, which is great to make it easy to communicate between players, but it wasn't a ton of new rules there. What did you guys think?
Nicky D, take it. What do you think, man?
Yeah, hey folks, Nicky D, and happy to jump in on this one. I know, headless voice in the warp once again. No, I like it. There's a lot of rules which may be similar. I don't know how many times I've had an opponent check the rule because in my codex, be it demons or blood angels or death guard, things work a certain way, but they say it works a little bit different. So to me, it helps even out those little rough edges that come up from time to time. It's not the end of the world, but I think this is a much simpler change. But Seth, I would agree, it makes things easier, but all in all, it's not something that impacts every minute of every game that you're playing.
I mean, guys, you know, Nicky D, you're right. Seth, you're right. I will be honest. When I heard that we're going the way the USRs, is like, oh man, are we going to lose a little bit of that flavor? You know, having the unique verbiage for each army. Like, no. It's totally worth it. We don't need to have 30 different names. For each strike.
It makes it easier for us to communicate as players to each other. Yeah. I can tell you, Kicker, that this unit has infiltrate, and your unit has. You can tell me has feel no pain, and we know immediately what that means.
Yeah. The benefits outweigh the little bit of the fluffiness. So yeah, awesome stuff.
Right. You guys ready for number 8?
Let's do it.
This one's going to hit close to heart for you, Kicker. Terrain streamlining. They have streamlined a lot of the terrain rules. And essentially, and we've seen a lot of those rules already in the preview articles, but essentially we would, in colloquial terms, be like, this is a ruin. And we all knew that in 9th edition ruins had breachable, obscuring, scalable, defensible, etc., like cover. Yeah. And now, rather than having to say, all of these things are on my ruin, you just say it's a ruin, and that automatically says these are the rules that apply to it. So it makes it a lot easier. Basically, there's just one benefit of cover now. There's not heavy cover, light cover, and dense cover. It's just benefit of cover, which is +1 to your save. So that helps a lot to ease some gameplay. And the removal of dense cover doesn't, it gets a little less finicky, because then there's like, am I measuring this line and that line, and do I have the right angle so that my unit doesn't take a -1? So it's kind of smoothed all that out and made it a lot more simplified. Now, some folks don't want more simplified terrain, but I think in terms of making it quicker and easier to play, which has always been GW's stated goal, I think they have streamlined and simplified the terrain.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, but I think there's only 6 types of terrain, and it's 6 types is pretty easy. And the fact that they're, for lack of a better word, universal, that they're stated in the core rulebook. It doesn't make a difference if you're playing in Tokyo or you're playing in Nebraska. Everyone understands how the terrain is going to function on the table, which has been a problem, especially things like the LVO, where we got people coming in from around the world where, yes, it's a ruin, but people play it slightly different, or have slightly different expectations. So here that crater has a set of rules. There's no question about it. So good stuff. Good
so
stuff.
that's very, I like that. I like the simplicity of the terrain. Nicky, what do you think?
Yeah, Seth. So I'm just going to point out that is a great rule, number 8, but 8 is Corn's number, right? And you've got a rule that you noted at number 7 that is very much involved in something that Corn loves a whole lot. So do you want to jump into that?
I thought it was more important, so I had to put it at number 7. But our number 7 is how the fight order work and engagement works now. So engagement range is still 1 inch. But units can fight either if they're within engagement range, aka 1 inch of your enemy, or you're in base-to-base contact with a friendly model that's within base-to-base contact of an enemy model. So they have shortened the distance that a unit can fight, because before you could be half an inch from a friendly unit that was half an inch from an enemy model. They've closed that gap. And now there's just 2 fight steps. There's the fight first, and then there's the fight normal. And fight first you get when you charge. I'm sure some other units will have ways to get fight first, but importantly, they have changed it so that the player whose turn it is not always is the first one in each step. So if you, I don't know, say demon-loving Nicky had a bunch of Slanesh maybe that had a bunch of fight first or something, and I charged in his orcs, he would get the first activation if he had fight first natively in his army. So that massively buffs fight first, and it massively cleans up the fine detail of measuring and trying to maneuver to get your models in. You can just literally just smash them in base to base. There you go. We're done.
It's not arbitrary. It's either they're in base to base or they're not. Right? I mean, like, I can't tell you guys.
The 1 inch bubble, and then after that, it's base to base.
You're using those little widgets and your little tape measure. Am I half an inch within this guy? I can't tell. Base to base or not. It's easy to use. Cool.
Nicky, do you want to fight first?
Yes. Well, and I'm a big fan of this change. Again, it's one of those items where, especially for newer players, it was an item that was a cause for a lot of heartache and headache trying to figure out those parts of it. And to me, this was always one of those where it was very much an art as finesse into how to do that well, but it was also one where it just as frequently led to feels bad for players. So I think this is an area where it is still going to reward players that have appropriate and proper movement. That is the most important part of this game, but it is one where I think it's easier to understand for all the players. So keeping with, I guess, that mantra of simplified but not simple, in that how this is still going to work. It is still going to take tactics. It is still going to take a thoughtful approach.
All right. Our number 6. I actually, when I saw this rule when I was reading through the book, I had to read it like 2 or 3 times. I then went off and sought multiple high-level judge opinions to make sure I was reading it right. But our number 6 change is a change to Big Guns Never Tire. Now, Big Guns Never Tire is the rule that allows monsters to shoot or vehicles to shoot in their engagement. But now they can shoot out of combat as well. So if you engage a vehicle or monster, it can shoot out of that combat. It will take a -1 penalty to its shooting rolls. But the flip side is you can also now shoot monsters or vehicles that are engaged with friendly units. So they aren't safe hiding in combat, but they also aren't shut down by being in combat. So I think that's a huge change to how vehicles and monsters are able to operate. Shooting vehicles and monsters are basically always going to be able to operate now. And if you think about it, when they bracket, a lot of these guys have in their data sheets, when they get below certain wounds, you subtract 1 to your hit roll. You can't have multiple -1s. So doesn't matter. I'm -1 hit already. I'll shoot out of combat, shoot whatever I want. So I think that's a big boost in the efficiency to those models, but also prevents them from the combat ones from touching a little unit and avoiding any repercussions for it.
So I'm going to try to be neutral here. Despite me being a tank-loving guard player, I'm trying to be neutral here. I think this is an amazing rule because it also just seems more realistic. I hated when orcs would take one little grot and touch my tank, and suddenly my tank can't do anything but fire at the stupid grot that it would basically roll over. It makes it a little bit more, I don't want to say realistic, but makes it a little bit more realistic.
And to be fair, the orcs wouldn't care about the grot touching the tank. They would still shoot the tank.
Right? So there we go. So I think that this is a beautiful update.
All right. Let's move on to our number 5. This one is huge. Number 5 is the movement of desperate escape and emergency disembarkation from stratagems to core rules. So your units are always able to break out if they are trapped in combat. And if your opponent has completely blocked out that 3-inch bubble in which you would get out of a vehicle, you can always go to that 6-inch. Now, they have changed the lethality of these. So before, when you would try to do an emergency disembarkation, you have to roll it on 1s and 2s. You would slay models. Now it's on 1, 2s, and 3s. That unit takes mortal wounds. So it's a little bit better for multi-wound model units. About the same for single wound model units. And then same thing with Desperate Escape. It used to be, you roll and on a 1, the model dies. Now it's a 1, 2, or 3. You take a mortal wound on that unit, but it basically means you can never be trapped in combat at this point unless someone is able to literally completely bubble out and cover the entire area around your model's movement radius with their models. At which point, I think you shake their hand and say, "Good job."
They earned that. They
did. They really.
Nicky D, as a melee player, are you happy about this? I mean, did you try to trap in, units? Was that a thing that you were frequently doing?
I think every melee player does. So, but it's an item where I think, again, you can move back or you have the option to do so. It's not without its own risks in doing so. So there's a point and a counterpoint. Like some of the other rules, it's another area where a player is given a choice or a way to not be stuck in a certain situation, but it comes with downside to it. So again, I think this is an area where I think this sort of rule can also be weaponized in a way by players that are very much on top of their tactics. So it's an area where I think a lot of newer players are going to enjoy having this as an option. But even at high level tables, I think this is something that we're going to see used.
Cool. All right. Kicker. Our next one, if number 5 hurt the combat armies, number 4 is, who boy, is going to be a big one.
Oh, no.
Number 4 is the change to pile in and consolidate as well as charge moves. Okay. Charge moves now, if you are able to end your charge in base-to-base contact with your target unit, you have to. And then the same thing applies to pile in and consolidate. If using your pile in movement of 3 inches or your consolidate movement of 3 inches, you are able to get base-to-base with an enemy unit, you have to do it.
Yeah.
So there is no more kind of skating around a unit and getting, 0.1 inches closer, but moving 3 inches side to side and then kind of slowly moving around a unit to either A, wrap them, or B, touch other units. That's really going to cut down on a lot of the shenanigans that you could pull during the fight phase, cut down on the feels bads. But overall, it's definitely going to hurt combat armies because sometimes they needed to use those shenanigans just to stay alive to the next turn.
Wait, so hot take real fast. I know we're not through all top 10, but it seems like shooty armies are having a little bit more love so far.
I think overall, I would say shooting got a buff in the form of Big Guns Never Tire, and then most everything else change-wise, if there was any nerfs, it was the combat. So I'd say, invest in guns, folks.
Yeah,
like 40K guns. Nicky D, what do you think? Another combat player, another tool from your toolbox.
Yep, limitations that come in there. The biggest thing is going to be, scoring for the game and how many points things are going to cost. So definitely shooting is stock is high, and for shooting armies in the game, tanks,
buy
monsters,
shooting.
Yeah,
buy shooting.
Tanks, monsters, they're definitely incentivized and pushed based on what we've seen so far. But it's all going to come down to how many points these things cost and how do you score points, because I can get tabled. I can have nothing left by the end of the game, but I might have more points than my opponent. So I agree, but it's not all gloom and doom just yet.
Okay.
Just yet.
I'm
not hitting the not hitting the panic button just yet.
Not selling the Blood Angels just yet. All right. My number 3 change was character buffs and characters being able to join units. So they've removed most of the auras from the game. There's no longer 6-inch bubbles of buffing characters. There's a few that still get it, like Gilliman, and I think they've shown like what's the big AdMech guy?
Oh, Call.
Yeah. So a few of them still have it, but it's not going to be every model in the HQ slot, so to speak. And the fact that those buffs that those models do convey are mostly by joining units. So it makes it very clear that this character is buffing that unit. I think they've shown like a Space Marine librarian that has that ability. So you don't have to worry about this buff getting handed off to a bunch of different units and causing a big force multiplying effect. So I think that is a big change in terms of balance. And also, as far as I'm aware, Kicker, once a character has joined a unit, if that unit dies, that character can't go jump into another unit, right?
Yeah, I've not seen. I mean, I've tried to look for this and I can't find it. And I mean, chat.
So you gotta be, you can't just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna, this fragile shooting unit, I'm gonna attach this character to, and then when they kill that one, I'm gonna hop it into the next fragile shooting unit. Like you're not gonna be able to do that, and those characters are gonna die in that scenario. So I think it makes for very interesting list construction. It puts more emphasis on the units.
To be clear, I think it's 2 characters can join 1 unit, right? Is that the limitation?
1 character can join a unit unless there's an exception otherwise, such as like the Primaris Lieutenant's data sheet says.
Okay, there we go.
It can join a unit that a captain's already attached to.
Okay, cool. That makes sense then. Okay.
But otherwise, it's 1 character per unit. So it's really going to limit the stacking of buffs, which I think is a big thing.
Cool.
Let's get into our number 2. This is huge. This is Battle Shock. It's been previewed to death already on multiple army abilities, as well as GW has previewed the main rule. But I think Battle Shock, before morale was not a huge component of the game. Battle Shock, I think, is significantly different in that once a unit is under that half strength, it's testing every friendly player turn. Yeah. So it's not like, in previous editions, if Kicker and I are playing, and Kicker, you kill all but 2 of my Gretchen out of a unit of 10, and I pass that initial morale check, those 2 Gretchen are totally fine to go hide behind a wall on an objective for the rest of the game.
Exactly.
And not have to worry about it. But now, if you do that, I always have to consider the possibility that those Gretchen will fail their battle shock, become an OC of 0, and not be able to hold that objective for me. Yeah. So that is always something that's going to have to be in the back of your mind. It's always going to have to be something you're keeping track of, because not only does it cause you to have an OC of 0, it prevents you from using stratagems on those units, and it prevents you from being able to fall back normally. All your fallbacks become desperate escapes. So I think this is definitely a big mechanic and actually going to make leadership an important component of the game.
And this is a huge cultural shift, right? Like, this is something that all of a sudden, it's another, I don't want to say phase, but it's another thing that you're going to have to remember to do every single turn. Because like you said, Seth, it's going on the entire game now. You're going to have to check on those 2 grots. So you're just going to get used to the fact that, okay, we're done. Let's go check morale or battle shock real fast. Nicky D, what do you think? Is this going to impact you that much?
I'm looking forward to it impacting my opponents when I make them take battle shock
silly
tests.
Demons.
Yeah, demons, Death Guard traditionally have had some things impacting their leadership, or now it'll be battle shock. I'm very curious. Again, I also love my Blood Angels, and in past editions, Death Company were a fearless unit, meaning they always pass. So like, are there going to be units that automatically get to pass battle shock or have other? I hope those are few and far between, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's the leadership. It is a statistic. It's a stat on the data sheet just as much as everything else. So I'm looking forward to it actually having an impact in the game, and something that everybody's going to need to be checking. Ballistic Seal and Save are not the only things that matter on the data sheet.
Good point though. I'm just thinking about this, right? That it, you can force, you as demons are going to be able to force more battle shock tests. We know NIDS can do it. As we talked in our earlier video regarding the strats, for 1 CP, after we roll, so after we've already failed it, for 1 CP, we can force that pass, which is actually a really nice strat. So I think that strat's going to get used a ton.
That's why I said I'm an insane bravery guy now, not a command reroll guy.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for the number 1 biggest change? The biggest, craziest change out of the entire edition?
Let's do it.
Mind-blowing change, Kicker.
What is it? What do we got?
CP.
CP.
Yeah, no, I know that everyone thinks that's immediately your reaction is that's a letdown. CP is not a huge change, Seth. But the fact that you start every game with 0 CP,
Yeah, that hurts.
that means there is no big wombo combo alpha strike turn 1.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're
That
going to wait
means
turn 2,
that if
turn
you
3.
really, really want to do that heroic intervention turn 2, you got to save that turn 1 CP.
Yeah, good point. Good
Because
point.
any of those 2 CP strats, the first player turn, no one can use them. Period.
Good point. Good
So
point.
if you have a 2 CP strat in your codex, you're just sitting there not doing anything. And it really slows the tempo of the game down. And it really prevents those early haymakers, those alpha strikes that might take you out of the game. So I know it seems like a simple change, but to me, that's huge. It's putting everyone on the same footing.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Seth, just for full, complete sake here, you guys will be getting 1 CP, just like in 9th edition, at the beginning of each player's command
Correct.
phase. So by turn 2, you if you haven't spent any, you should have a couple of CP in your
You
pocket.
should be on like 2 or 3 at that point,
yeah, exactly,
depending on what you've done. But even then, like, if you wanted to if I shot your unit kicker,
yeah,
and you really wanted it to be alive, and I went first and you went second, you spend your CP on insane bravery, you're back to just I'm on 1 CP during my turn.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point.
So it really trims down the pool that we have and really jacks up the value of each one.
And speaking of jacking up the value, it also jacks up the value of the units or the enhancements or the special rules that summaries have
that allow
to generate CP, because now you're going to be needing it. Oh, we got Nicky D coming in.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Not just things that generate CP, but with all the rules that Seth and Kicker you guys have previewed here, the top 10, some of the things we've talked about with stratagems, it puts a lot of the focus on the data sheets themselves and the actual units, not necessarily the leaders, right? So when we talk about having a good game of 40k and one that is a better balanced game, all of this reads to me as something where a lot of the alpha strikes or a lot of big combos, Seth, as you mentioned, those are going to be more difficult to pull off. So, if there are truly units that are taking over the board and taking over events, it's going to be easier for that to be shown in the data and have those adjusted. I think that, to me, I mean, again, we're still learning all the things, but that's what this is reading as to me, and I think that'll be a good thing for the game in the long run.
Yeah, I like that. I think you're right. I think this is a good balancing technique. So that's my top 10 changes. Do you guys think I missed any big ones? Kicker, Nicky?
No, I mean, I think that you've got it. I think what's interesting about 10th edition, which is maybe not is that everyone's starting with no codex, right? We're starting this off.
We're all starting on the index phase.
Yeah, on index, which is kind of nice. We're all on the same playing field, roughly, So that'll be a nice fresh start. Nicky D, what do you think? Is there anything else we need to discuss? Big points here.
Yeah, this would probably be in my top 3, and it's something we covered on one of our prior videos. So make sure to check out all the videos. But how we play the missions, guys, right? With the card selection, that's a huge change. It is a callback to, in a way, Maelstrom of War in 7th edition and prior, or Tempest of War, which we've had more recently. I'm eager to see with it. I'm eager to see what TOs do with it. Are they going to pre-select what the missions are? Are they going to be randomized? I think that is just going to be ground for Tzeentch to have his ways and forcing a lot of change with the games, the results, the tournaments. So I think the mission selection is going to be the really most interesting thing.
Yeah.
Guys,
10th
I'm
edition,
very interested in how that gets adopted by the TO community.
10th edition is on the horizon. It's big, it's new, but it doesn't have to be scary. Even with all these changes that Seth just went through, it's still a game that's very familiar. It's still what we know and love. It's just been tweaked. It looks like for the better in most parts, especially if you like to run tanks. But in many ways, it looks like it's going to be a very familiar.
Kicker, are you ready for a shameless plug?
All right.
If 10th edition felt overwhelming to you, you could head on over to the Play on Tabletop channel, where Frontline Gaming has helped them create a How to Play 10th edition series. So go check out the guys over on Play on Tabletop. Check out their How to Play 10th edition. If you want a full breakdown, I think that's going to be a great place for you to get that information, because they have been working hard on that for you guys.
And Nicky D, if people want to pick up one of these beautiful new box sets, where do they go?
Well, what I would do, Kicker, I would recommend them to just check the show notes that's here on this YouTube video, and there will be an affiliate link to the Frontline Gaming page. So pre-order goes up June 10th. They will be available June 24th, so recommend checking that out. helping out Kicker and the team at Frontline Gaming. We're all really excited for 10th edition. We're ready for it. I'm super excited. I could not be more pumped. And I'm waiting to get my Leviathan box, and I hope you are too.
Cool.
All right. Well, don't forget, put in the comments if you disagree with me. You know, I can take it. I'm a big guy. I can take it. But we really thank you guys for checking out this series we did, the Signal Special Reports. We're super excited. We're going to have some more things in the pipeline before the release of 10th edition completely comes out. So be staying tuned to the Frontline Gaming YouTube channel. And until next time, have a good one.